Hey guys, and welcome to another Schematics update. This time we want to talk about Parkitect, and we have a special guest for that, Garret. Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, just chilling here with you guys. Happy to answer questions and talk about the game.
So let's get right into it, huh?
Because Parkitect's in beta, and that's kind of a big deal.
Oh yeah, we did just go into beta.
Don't spoil it.
Okay. I'll shut up.
Spoilers.
Teasers?
Spoil the plot of the game, man. Come on.
So let's get into it. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Garret, one of the full-time developers of Parkitect. I do art and co-design it and do some of the business stuff and other things. And Sebastian, who is my business partner, does the code and also co-designs it and also does some of the business stuff. But him and I are kind of the driving force behind the game, alongside some other contractors and stuff, like a Shell in the Pit, you know, Gordon McLattery and M. Halverstadt. And we have Tim and Luke, who were the Parkitect Nexus modders who we hired to do stuff for us part-time and have now put modding support into the game, which is cool.
What has it been like working on Parkitect in early access for the past year?
I would say it's been fun, you know, like it's challenging because you have to build that community from the start. So really early on, we were worried about the reception because nobody's blind to how early access kind of is, right? Like everybody's kind of wary to buy an early access title because it's not finished and they don't want to burn out. And that's totally fair, right? But we kind of needed it to fund development and also to help test the game. So it was kind of scary at first, but after the initial couple months and we found our audience and built that community, it was really cool. Like we had this really dedicated small group of people who would find bugs and report them to us. And today it's actually really cool because now of course we have modding support, and that's kind of unusual for early access even this far along in it. And I think we've changed some minds about early access even a little bit, and that's kind of nice. That's kind of what I wanted to do a little bit.
What's the difference between being on Steam Early Access and off Steam Early Access? Because your game was available on Early Access before you came to Steam, right?
Right, yeah. So we were on Humble first, I think, after the Kickstarter, because they're great to work with and they've been really cool to us. I think that the biggest thing is maybe audience. Steam has a gigantic audience and user base, and once you put it on there, things get kind of crazy because of all the eyes on your game. Suddenly a lot of people, and you got to make sure you're prepared to deal with that, and also the negative voices that are going to come with that, just because that's what happens on the internet, unfortunately. But when we were in Humble Early Access, it was a very small group of people, and an even smaller part of that were vocal, right? Because a lot of people are kind of silent. But they were very vocal, those small people, right? Like initially they were the ones who were like really suggesting a lot of things and trying to help us get the game into a good spot. I don't want to say like pushing us and the game in a specific direction, but they seemed on board with the direction we were going. Where on Steam, you get a lot more people who are trying to push for their specific vision of what the game should be, and that doesn't necessarily align with what we want it to be. So I would say like the Humble days were a lot more of like the Kickstarter backer people and maybe the hardcore park builder fans and stuff like that, right? So, but the Steam numbers have been invaluable for sure.
Just looking at Steam where it is right now, you know, even since you guys launched into early access, a lot of things have changed. Steam is very busy. It's very crowded. Looking at Steam the way it is right now, how do you think that being in early access for a year plus on Steam will affect launching into 1.0?
I think it'll cause a few challenges because the way it goes, and a lot of devs will say this, and I've heard it at a lot of talks, it's like your early access launch sort of becomes your for real launch. Like those numbers matter a lot more. And we did pretty good. Obviously not as big as some big name games, but for us it felt really good. Being in early access for a year, you sort of get a lot of your users during that period. I don't know if we'll see a lot of player growth afterwards. Statistically, I think it's true that you'll hit some kind of peak user base during early access. I'm not sure it'll get much bigger than that. When we come out of it, we'll have to do some marketing, and there's definitely a subset of people who don't buy early access games that we hope to convince to come back and check out the game now that it's in a 1.0 format and has a campaign at that point, right? So we'll see how that goes. That's a big challenge for early access games, is how do you transition out of this early access state and try to get more players and, you know, hopefully make enough sales to keep going.
So, as Blind spoiled earlier, you're in beta now, and I wonder what does beta means for Parkitect. So basically, what's the difference between alpha and beta for you guys?
Right, so alpha took most of the last year, and during alpha we were building most of the major features that we promised in Kickstarter and just some things we wanted to add. For us, beta means that the major features are complete, and traditionally beta means feature complete. It needs testing and polish and some other stuff, and it'll be done, right? But for us, it's major features complete, which is the things like the scenery visibility for the guests, how they can see from the paths to the scenery, and if it blocks their viz to the visibility to the utility structures, and if they like that. And also how rides are affected by visibility. That was a big one. That was something we promised in Kickstarter, and it was like one of the major things holding us back. And also the audio engine had to be rebuilt, and we got a custom audio engine that Chris over at A Shell in the Pit has been writing for the last year, and that was super important because I'm sure if you guys played it any time during the last year, it probably didn't sound super great. Like there's a lot of cutting in and out, and voices were getting choppy, and the music wasn't reliable. The new audio engine solves a lot of problems for us that we had, and also just sounds better. It just took so long because they were building a whole new sound engine, right? And the software is never easy. And there's still like some issues with it, but it's already a lot better. So we'll see that improve over time. But that was a big blocker for going into beta because you don't want to go that farther without a good sounding game. And of course, there's all the little stuff like, oh, we needed some more rides, and we needed to get this delivery system working and all that other stuff.
How long do you plan to be in beta?
I kind of have to avoid giving numbers. It won't be as long as alpha, like guaranteed. Alpha was what, just over a year? Yeah. Beta will not be that long. To keep it vague, hopefully less than half as long.
So I wonder how hard was it to balance the game, or how do you try to balance it to make it fun for casual players but also the hardcore player base?
Yeah, so the game balance is an ongoing thing, right? Like you never hit perfect balance. It's always kind of like a seesaw, like you kind of try to get it as close as possible, but it's never quite there. So it's like this constant battle with the systems of the game. Early on we tried to make it balanced as much as we could while we were missing systems, and that was more to support the sandbox element of it, and we still want to support that because a lot of people just want to build cool parks, but now we're much closer to where we want to be. We have a delivery system where you can build depots and connect them with pipes, and the crates get moved around your park, and that's actually really expensive to build, so you have to be careful, but that maybe isn't quite there. So the challenge really is when you have a game that is built up of many interlocking systems. If you change numbers somewhere, it affects the whole game. So like if I change how much it costs for resources, like let's say meat costs, suddenly I make it cost like $8 per box. Suddenly that leads into, okay, if that costs money, do I want to be ordering as much, or how do I want to like scale the burger thing? I don't actually know if you can scale burgers, but just, you know, hypothetically, like how that affects deliveries and how that affects how many employees you hire, and if you train those employees or let them work on their own and level up on their own. Let's say how a ride is balanced. So a roller coaster, they're very complicated to balance because it's all curves. There's like 7 or 8 curves you have to work through, and not all rides use them all because we want each coaster to hopefully feel a little bit unique. But if I change that, then I have to go through like 6 coaster designs to make sure it's working the way I want it to across all of them, and you have to go from like a really bad coaster design to like a medium coaster design to a really good one, and hopefully it works how you expect all the way, and you got to do that with every ride. So that's why in the past our balancing passes have been like, okay, this month is a balancing month, we have to go through every single roller coaster, and that takes weeks, I think. It's easier if for flat rides we just put in some numbers, and we have to make sure that works with other flat rides. The scenery stuff is more there than it's ever been with visibility, but I have to go through and reprice all of it now because the prices are not feeling right to me, and I went through the list, and it's gonna be a long time, but we're getting there, and it's ongoing. We're getting pretty close, and it's feeling better than it has, but I don't think it's 100% yet.
So I just want to kind of ask the maybe kind of obvious question, but what does mod support mean for the future of Parkitect?
Mostly longevity, right? Longevity. I don't know how to pronounce that word. But, you know, and Valve has said this a lot, you know, with the Half-Life games and any of their games. They always add mod support because it encourages people to come back, and it adds a lot of value to your game, just to talk business-wise about it, because people are always adding new things, hopefully, and then people want to come back and check that out. It's important to us to let people also fill in the gaps where we might not be adding something, or we just missed it. You know, like scenery is important because 2 people isn't enough to fill a giant game with art, so we have to build in these mod tools to encourage the community to just add cool stuff. And with Parkitect's art style and how easy Unity is to use and Blender is free, you can make something really quickly and just throw it into the game with the modding tools that we made and share it with people, and that's super cool, right? It's kind of similar to how Cities works, because they're also a Unity game, but the mods added so much to that game, you know, just fill the gaps where we can't get to because we have a lot to do. It's not just scenery mods, right? Like, sure, we built a tool for scenery mods, but you can also upload ride mods and stuff. It's just those they might break with every update, where the scenery mods definitely won't because we built the tool. So it'll be interesting when people start using it for complicated mods like that require code and things.
So Parkitect has a very unique art style. Do you fear modding could kind of break the art style of the game?
I think a little bit, but I think what modding adds to the game overrides that, if you know what I mean. Like, sure, people could put some super realistic stuff in the game or something really strange, but I think what people will get out of that means a lot more than my vision for the game or the artistic integrity of the game. People having fun and enjoying the game and building what they want to build is way more important to us than a consistent art style through mods, because obviously we can't control what people do, right? So I can make it as consistent as I want, and maybe people will try to match that. I think it would look better, but hey, if someone wants to make an ultra realistic tree, go for it. I think that might be neat. That could have some uses, I'm sure.
So you already said you can't say numbers, but how many scenarios are you aiming for the final release?
More than 10. And that's kind of vague, right? But it'll be more than 10. We have a very specific number we're aiming for, and we're very on track for that. That's like, sorry, that's a vague answer, and I want to tell you because, but you know, and I don't mean like 11. I mean like higher than that. So unfortunately, I gotta be a little vague for hype control reasons.
Well, I mean, I'm now banking on 12.
All right, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
So I kind of wonder what inspired the design of the scenarios.
It's a lot like old school park builders, right? So you're given the land, there's a little story with it, and some goals to do. We have outside contractors working on the scenarios, so Sebastian and I have very little to do with the look of them, but obviously we're going to go in and kind of make sure they work as designed and they make sense and put them in a specific order. But like, they're kind of, we want them to be distinct, not just like here's 15 grassy fields in a row and some of them have hills and here's a river. And to I guess spoil one of them, like the one I saw that Sebastian shared with me recently was like a kind of a Japanese garden feel to it, which I thought was really cool. And they're looking really nice. The person we have working on them is someone you guys know. So I think you probably know who I mean. But yeah, so because we're very small and we still have like some, like I have to add more rides and stuff, and Sebastian and Luke and Tim have to work on more, you know, software stuff and code stuff. So we really don't have a lot of time for us to be making the scenarios at the same time, so we just got some people part-time to build some scenarios for us and come up with the idea and the look, and then we can go in and place them and make sure they're balanced. And we also have challenge goals, I guess I'd call them, where you have your main goals, but then you also have some challenges to do. Harder goals that you don't have to do to progress kind of thing, but they're fun. There might be some kind of progression, but it might just be like completionist stuff, bragging rights, you know? So
I want to ask a question about humor. So a lot of older I guess, tycoon games, especially like the Bullfrog games, had a lot of kind of tongue-in-cheek lightheartedness to them. And when you look at a lot of modern, especially like tycoon games, obviously, you know, there's some like what Frontier's doing, which are a little bit lighter. There's a lot of smaller management games out there that are very, you know, dry, I think would be an easy way to describe it. So how do you prioritize humor and character in Parkitect?
Well, when we started, we always knew it had to be, like, just the idea of these games is really absurd, right? Like, there's an absurdity to it that doesn't quite make sense. Like, you're this omnipotent figure building a theme park, what the heck? But also there's of course negatives to theme parks, right? Like, there's safety issues and other things, and to go back to Bullfrog, like, Bullfrog had some very British humor, and it worked really well for the games, and those games are really cool and definitely an inspiration for Parkitect. So humor for us was like, of course there has to be some humor here. It's part of the genre, it's part of like the style of game we want to do, and the art style ended up being cartoony, so we knew we had to kind of pair that with some cartoon humor in a way. And it's not very called out in Parkitect, but there's some, like, I don't know how to call it, but your guests can die, and that's kind of depressing, but we made it kind of fun. Like, when they die, all these colorful ghosts come out, kind of like Pikmin, you know? And just to make it lighthearted and kind of goofy, and they all have really funny voices that are kind of like a mix of like The Sims and nonsense, because they can't speak English, or it would be a localization nightmare. The entertainers walking really goofy, and the guests babbling, and people getting hurt, like they can get struck by lightning and start sprinting really fast because, you know, they're full of energy now. Just little touches like that, I think, add a lot to make the game more entertaining and to make people smile and have fun with it. Where I think if it's too dry, it sort of becomes clinical in a way, and you kind of just are going through the motions, and there's nothing to really break up that monotony and how you feel about the game. And I think, like, if you look at Prison Architect, that definitely has some humor to it. Like, it's absurd, that game, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is there's like these builder games are really absurd if you consider them from a realism standpoint, so you kind of have to play into that. Like, Prison Architect is like, wow, some of these prisons would never work, but they do in this game, so there's some goofiness to it there. Oh, Dwarf Fortress is like the king of goofiness. There's some really weird stuff, and I just love how that game builds narratives and how complicated it is. And only that game could do it. And yeah, we just wanted to kind of bring back to that Bullfrog without going as far as they do, because I'm not that funny.
That's fair.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I like humor in games. You know, games are meant to make you smile and have fun, and especially a theme park game should be kind of fun, right? And kind of funny. You go to these places to have fun, so why shouldn't the game reflect that? And when I play a builder game and it doesn't have some kind of humor to it or some kind of thing, it kind of gets dry to me.
What are your plans for the future? Meaning, after release, are you planning to release new content like packs or DLCs, or are you just taking a break?
I think we'll definitely take a break, but you know, we have to make games, so it won't be for too long. We sort of discussed this recently, actually, very recently, and we don't have really any concrete plans for a major DLC that you would pay for, just because it would be hard for a team of our size to do that. It wouldn't really be feasible, because that would be a ton of work, and we also don't want to spend a year making it. But I think we will definitely support it with bug fixes and occasional new content that, you know, might take the place of a couple rides or something like that, or a scenery pack. If we do any paid DLC at all, here's some alternate coaster cars and a couple rides and some extra scenery maybe, you know what I mean? Like, it's tricky, but for sure what I can confirm is bug fixes, obviously, some new content here and there, and balance patches. You know, paid for DLC, I can't confirm anything, but we're definitely exploring the idea, but I don't know if we'll go that direction.
Garret, I want you to take the opportunity to shout yourself out, tell people where they can find you and your work, as well as Parkitect, the game.
Sure. So you can follow Sebastian and I and some other team members on Twitter. You can find us all through the Parkitect account, which is @Parkitect_game, and then we're all kind of linked through there. And you can find the game on Steam. It's just Parkitect. There's no theme. That was an early thing that we cut out. It's just Parkitect on Steam, Humble, and GOG, and the game's website, which is themeparkitect.com. Don't ask me why, it's a long story. We can't change it. So yeah, if you want to follow us, Twitter. I post about things other than Parkitect, but if you want just Parkitect, follow the game. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was fun answering the questions.
So first of all, thanks for joining, of course. And for our listeners and viewers, thanks for listening and viewing. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, we have a wonderful comment section. Use it if you want. And see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.